Okay, welcome to our Erev Shabbat class, Parashat Terumah, Chodesh Tov as well as Chodesh Adar. The nuances of the ark and the lessons of Torah therein. The questions this morning revolve around, of course, we are discussing the construction, the instructions to construct the Mishkan, the tabernacle, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe Rabbeinu, later to be played out actually in Parashat Vayakhel. And the instructions are very specific. They're very exact. They have great detail. And there is a certain order to the instructions. And the first vessel, after there's a general directive to create a mikdash, a mishkan, a place of dwelling for God, and I'll dwell within them, the first vessel that's focused on by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe Rabbeinu is the Aron, is the ark, as it's called in English, that will house the luchot, the tablets given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. And of course, on top of the Aron is this kaporet, is this cover that has these ornate, angelic figures, the cherubim, and in it, an incredible amount of depth of concepts and ideas and symbolism. And we're not going to focus on those. Instead, if we just start with a couple of first several Pesukim that deal with the command to create the Aron, there are small nuances that are easy to pick up if you generally review the parasha. And from them, obviously without any accident, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is projecting to us basic but fundamental and critical messages about what the Aron houses, which is the luchot, which in essence is our Torah Kedusha. So let's just take notice of, we'll call it 4 points and 2 pesukim, and try to glean what the Torah intends us, or at least some of the ideas and concepts within. So we are in Parashat Terumah, we're in Perek Kafeh, chapter 25, we're in Pasuk Yod, verse 10. The Torah tells us as follows: Va'asu Aron aseh shiltim, and you shall make craft an Aron, an ark, made out of wood, it's acacia wood. That's the type of wood that was used when it was used to construct the Mishkan. And here are the dimensions: 2.5 orko, v'ama v'chaisi rochbo, v'ama v'chaisi komato. 1.5 amot long, 1.5 amot wide. 2.5 amot long, 1.5 amma or amot wide, and 1.5 amot high. Okay, so it's a rectangular figure. It's not large at all, depending on whether you measure the Torah amma as what would amount to about 18 inches, 1.5 feet nowadays, or an amma, or could be a little more than that in Torah, would maybe be like 2 feet at most. Talking about 3 feet wide and 1.5 feet, 3 feet long and 1.5 feet wide. It's a small box, a small ark that's going to house these luchot, and not high either. In any case, did you pick something up that's unusual? Yes, no? Let's read the next pasuk. And you shall cover it, shall perhaps plaster it, you shall adorn it in the inside, the interior, and in the exterior with pure gold. In other words, it's going to be made of wood, but there'll be a interior, so to speak, covering or perhaps box, and an outer boxed area that'll be pure gold. And you shall place on it a zer zahab sabib, we'll call it a crown of gold. Now, let's retreat to the beginning of the first pasuk. The truth is, if you didn't first review the instructions in the continuation of the parasha and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu instructs the other vessels to be crafted, the first word here wouldn't be a question. Va'asu Aron, and you shall make, in the plural, an ark. However, if if we do review and do a cursory analysis of the wording of the rest of the instructions for the other vessels, you'll see they're all in singular tense. Va'asita, va'asita shulchan, va'asita menorah, ve'et hamishkan ta'aseh. These are all in singular. Va'asita te'kirashim, the beams. Va'asita, 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 going in all the way to next week's Parashat Tesaveh. All in the singular tense, besides the Aron, the first vessel that is directed to Moshe Rabbeinu to craft, and it's va'asu, and you shall, in plural, make the Aron. Okay, question one. Question two, look at the dimensions. If you notice, all the dimensions are incomplete. They're in fractions. It's 2.5 long, 1.5 wide, 1.5 high. If you look at the other vessels, the next one is the shulchan, the table, which held the bread, lechem panim. There it's partly fractioned. In other words, it is 2 even long, 1 even wide, but 1.5 high. So a few are complete dimensions, and 1 is a fraction dimension. If you look at the menorah, it does not have dimensions, but if you move on at the end of our parasha to the Mizbach HaGadol, Mizbach HaNechoshet, the large altar that most of the korbanot were placed upon, it's all even dimensions, as well as in next week's Parashat Tesaveh regarding the Mizbach HaZahab, Mizbach HaKetoret, the small golden incense altar inside the Mishkan that also has all even dimensions. So this is the only vessel that's all fractioned. Does that make a difference? Well, seemingly we have to take notice of it. It's a conspicuous nuance, is it not? Then we move on to the next pasuk, the second one. And analysis number 3. What is this structure that we have here? All other vessels have a material. They're gold, they're copper, some of the accessories are silver. This is what we'll call a triple-decker vessel. In that, we're told that it's made out of aseh shittim acacia wood. And then we're told that it's going to be literally the sipita. It will be plastered, it will be covered with gold in and out. And she explains to us, based on Hazal, there's actually a triple box where there's a gold box surrounded by a acacia wood box and surrounded by another gold box. What is it with this structure that's so unique? And what's necessary about that? Is it the width? Why do we need a wood sandwich here housed by gold? And finally, there's this zer zahab. Now, this is not only it's not the only unique vessel to have a golden crown commanded to be adorned with. To be sure, the shulchan has not one but two. It has a zed, a crown, and a mizgeret, a fence. And the mizbeach, the altar, mizbach HaKetoret, also has a zed, also has a crown around it. However, with both of those, with the mizbeach and with the shulchan, it says, Va'asita lo, make for it a zer zahab sabi, a golden crown, which is really a small fence or ridge, a rim surrounding it. Call it a zer is really a synonym for crown, but it says Va'asita lo on the other two, make for it a golden crown. Here it says Va'asita alav, place or put or make upon it. Some significance here. So 2 pesukim, 4 questions. And let's backtrack. So va'asu aron. The truth is this word, the commentaries go to town on this one because it's so obvious. Anybody that's reading, or at least reads through the rest of the parasha and is conscious of the basic wording and the grammar, will then be struck by and reflect back upon by the time we get to the end on this differentiation with the Aron, va'asu in plural. Who's the you? You're talking to Moshe Rabbeinu. Fine, there'll be a team later, but there's a team for every single vessel. Why the difference? Why the plural? There are numerous mefarshim. There are numerous mefarshim. I'll take a few that I think are very worthwhile to mention. The Or HaChaim explains something fascinating. And he explains Asu. Now, of course, the Aron is surrounding the Luchot, which is the beginning of, or perhaps the entirety of our Torah HaKadoshah. And I think every one of these nuances are pointing to lessons, at least regarding our Torah. And Va'asu, the plural of the Torah, says that you're creating something to house the Torah. Says the Or HaChaim, is that it's amazing that no one single person can keep the entire Torah. Did you ever think about that? Certainly Yisraelim cannot keep the entire Torah because you have all those laws specific to Kohanim. You do have the Kohanim can't keep the entire Torah because there are certain laws that are specific to Levim, and there's certain laws that they are exempt from, being their lack of official ownership of real estate, and the fact that they are not self-sufficient people. They lack certain mitzvot. Men, women, people in different circumstances. There's not a person in the Jewish nation, in the history of the Jewish nation, who's ever able to actually perform all 613 mitzvot. It's fascinating. Va'asu, we count on the cumulative effort of all of Am Yisrael to be able to fulfill the Torah. Va'asu, we want to accomplish Torah mitzvot. Guess what? You can't. You need your team. We rely on our nation. Every person in this nation, every sector, and every person of this nation is critical in being able to contribute and do their part and being the piece of the puzzle that fulfills the entire Torah now in all of history of Am Yisrael in order to mekayem Torah mitzvot. Amazing. That's Va'asu. I'd like to extend that, if I may, with an idea that, and I've spoken about this many times, Shabbat especially, that we need to be tolerant, not just tolerant and respectful of other views and other angles and different perspectives of Torah, Shiv'im Panim la Torah, but to really crave, pursue, and be in awe of the fact that the Torah reflects in different manners. And there is so many layers in Torah and so many perspectives of understanding, some which it may be agreeable to us, and some which may not. But we have to sit back and be in complete, be awestruck with the fact that the Torah houses and is the starting point for so many ideas and so much depth and so many layers of concepts and understandings and advice and directives. And so that Va'asu is again in the plural, because only all of Am Yisrael, with all the creativity and all the different traditional movements and sects of Torah now and throughout history, can really fulfill the Torah together. Then there is a practical idea that the Malbi mentions, and that is there are different people that can do their part. There are those great Talmidei Hachamim, Va'asu, they're masters of Torah. And then there are those who are embracers of Torah, but don't spend their life learning it, don't master like the great sages. And then there are those simple people that don't have the same opportunities, but they perhaps support Torah, and they give money to support Torah, and they support Torah in other means. And so that all of Am Yisrael, Allah's Yisachar v'Zebulun arrangement sometimes, must do their part to fulfill and accomplish Torah. Ve'asu. You need the cumulative effort once again. Okay? That is those are just a couple of solutions and approaches to why the Aron is commanded in the plural tense. Next, the Aron is, as we said, the only vessel that its dimensions are all fractions, 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. The Ketav Sofer quotes really enigmatic midrash, and he says the Aron, its dimensions are shivurot. Another way of saying fractions is that they're broken. they're incomplete. And it's al derech, he says, Ishkon be'ed daka. It's a pasuk that says that God dwells amongst the broken. Broken here can be humble. It can also be those that are having difficulty. And that the Torah, there's a place in the Torah for everyone. And that Kadosh Baruch Hu certainly embraces those who are struggling with Torah, but even the more so dwells amongst those who humble themselves to learn Torah and subject themselves to the Torah. And therefore the dimensions are broken. We move on to the box, this idea of the inner and the outer. And some Mefarshim mentioned that this represents the fact that Tamid Hacham has to be Tocho Kevaro. There is an outer presentation. It's gold, it's shiny, it's beautiful, it's charismatic, it's sophisticated, it's eloquent. Then there is something in the inside. It's solid and it's wood. And if you go further inside, there's gold. Now, are there those that are just very flashy and sophisticated on the outside, but are not consistent, and their inner belief system and traits and thoughts are not really what they display to be on the outside? And if you go further in, there isn't that same purity. Every person, but especially Tamid Hacham, has to be Tocho Kevaro. There's nothing artificial. There's true blue. There is a transparency. There is a consistency. There is an exterior representation of Torah that's completely and exactly the same as the interior character and belief and principles and behaviors. Exterior, interior, inside, outside, it's all the same. And therefore, you have gold in the further exterior, and in the deep interior, pure gold as well. One of the possible ideas. And finally, you have this fascinating idea of the Zer Zahab. Now, what exactly was the crown? On the Mizbeach and on the Shulchan, there are different opinions exactly how the crown looked, but certainly it was this addition, a small, more frail, thin addition to the solid gold structure that looked like an ornate elevation and somewhat of a crown on top of the ridges, on top of the outside area of those vessels. However, Rashi explains that what was the zer of the Aron? It wasn't an added crown. It was simply that, again, there are three boxes, and the outside, most exterior box, which was gold, was a little more elevated than the next two, the wood and the gold. So that when you place the kaporet on the cover, on the Aron, it would fit very neatly and nicely on top of the first two layers, but it would be surrounded by the third layer. It would be snug in there. And that was very neat and practical. But that, if you look at it in a manner, created a crown, wherein the outside box, the exterior, was higher than the interior. So there was a lip sticking up. Is it really an ornate crown? Absolutely not. But it was something that was above. That was the crown. Now, it's a little bit ironic. You would think the Aron of all vessels has something more of a real crown. But there's a Midrash Rabbah, that gives us some insight on this. Says the Midrash, this is from Shemot Rabbah, chapter 34. Here it is. Va'asita, it says as follows. Asu. The next one. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Shulosha ketarim hem. There are three crowns. This is also reflected in Pirkei Avot. What are the three crowns? Keter Malchut, Keter Kehuna, v'Keter Torah. One is the crown of royalty, other is the crown of priestlyhood, Kohanim, and the crown of Torah. Keter Malchut, Zeh HaShulchan. That's represented by the vessel of the table. Dichtiv bo zer zahav sabib. It has a crown on it. And of course, the table, among other representations, represents the authority, the providing of sustenance, the providing of security, all which was under the auspices of the king. And the crown around it, therefore, is the actual literal crown of the king. Keter kihuna zehem mizbeach. Of course, what represents the crown and the authority of the priesthood of the Kohanim? That is the mizbeach. Dichtiv bo zer zahav sabib. And indeed, the mizbeach had a crown around it, and that was the offerings, the offerings on the altar that only the Kohanim could offer. The keter Torah zeh ha'aron. Dichtiv bo zer zahav. The Aron represents the crown of Torah that also says zer zahav. Lama nichtavim. So there's 3 crowns. Now, what in the crown of Torah is different? We refer then to Pirkei Avot. And Pirkei Avot tells us that Keter Torah, whoever wants to seize it, whoever wants to stake claim to it, is welcome to it. And Hachamim explained to us as follows. The crown of Malchut is absolutely through lineage. You want to be a king? Fine. You have to be a descendant of the Davidic dynasty, or else you're out. Very few people. There's no choice. And therefore the Torah says, Va'asi talo, regarding the shulchan and the crown of kingship, of royalty, make for him. There's no choice. We know who the guy is. He gets the crown. Now, what about the keter kihuna? Hachamim says as well that it is not a privilege that can be earned or acquired. It is a privilege that, again, is through lineage and descendancy. If your father and grandfather going back to Aaron HaKohen, to Pinehas, were not Kohanim, then you're not a Kohen. Va'asi talo, says the Torah regarding the Mizbeach when they crowned the altar and authorized the priests and the Kohanim to do their thing in the service of God. Va'asi talo, you make a crown for him because it's only him. It's already pre-identified. When it comes to Torah, tell us Hachamim, there is no monopoly on Torah. There's not a single family. There's not a single person that's privileged to Torah. You make for yourself a prestige and a mastery and an accomplishment and a level of Torah. It's what you invest is what you receive. It's all about the person's commitment and lifelong pursuit of Torah. The crown is there for the taking. The lowest person, in terms of socioeconomic status, in terms of raw intelligence, in terms of background, royalty, priesthood, it doesn't matter, can become a Tamir Hacham. And in fact, the law is, technically speaking, that if you are Tamir Hacham Mamzer, Tamir Hacham, that is a product of an, unfortunately, incestual relationship, he comes before a Kohen Gadol Am Ha'aretz, a high priest who is not educated. That is not only the crown that is there for the taking, that is up for grabs, but is the most prestigious crown of all. That is the crown of Torah. And that is why anyone else cannot mohel, forego their honor. A king, a Kohen, his honor is in place. The laws that are relevant to him cannot be forgiven and foregone. But Tamir Hacham can. Do you know why? Because he's in charge of his own office. He's mastered his own Torah. He is the Baal, and therefore he has what to say about his status. He wants to forego, he can. And therefore, when it comes to the Aron, it says, Va'asi talo, not for him. There's no particular person that deserves or earns. It says Allah. It's whoever it is. The Torah is there for the taking. You can master it. You can become a Tamir Hacham and a leader of the generation and the most prestigious person in the generation if you want. It's all there and it's yours. All these are messages from the unmistakable nuances that the Torah plans in these first two Pesukim, in the instructions of the crafting of the Aron that houses our most precious vessel and asset of all, and that's the Torah Kedosha. Baruch Adonai L'Olam. Amen. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Chodesh Tov.